Have you ever felt like there's a committee meeting happening inside your head, and you weren't invited? One voice says, "Go for it." Another whispers, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" A third voice brings up a memory from 10 years ago that has absolutely nothing to do with the situation. And a fourth, the chairperson, stamps its authority on the final, often confused decision and says, "I have decided." This isn't just a metaphor. This is the reality of our inner world. The ancient yogic sciences mapped this internal operating system with breathtaking precision, long before we had terms like software or Hisdribisar, neural networks. They saw the mind not as a single entity, but as a dynamic, four-part inner instrument, the Antahkarana. In our last conversation, we explored the grand territories of consciousness, the states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Today, we go deeper. We move from the Tate's what to the dull line Tabar, comly, how. We are going to decode the four functions that create your entire experience of reality. This is the journey into Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahankara. Let's begin with the part of the mind we know most intimately, the one that never seems to be quiet. This is Manas. Imagine a chaotic, vibrant marketplace at the center of a city. Carts are rolling in from 5 different gates, each gate representing one of your senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Manas is the floor manager of this marketplace. It receives every single piece of data. It sees the bright red of a fruit, smells the aroma of fresh bread, hears a distant argument, feels the texture of a fabric. But it doesn't just receive, it processes. It immediately attaches a label. I like this, I don't like that. It generates a flicker of desire, a wave of revulsion, a pang of doubt. Manas is the restless, fluctuating sensory mind. It is the part of you that thinks in a constant, rambling monologue, jumping from one thought branch to another, like a frantic monkey. It is the source of the endless mental chatter, the what-ifs, and the if-onlys. When you are trying to make a decision, Manas is what presents the options, often in a state of conflict. Should I eat the cake, or should I stick to my diet? It lives in a world of duality, of pleasure and pain, of attraction and aversion. Neuroscientists today might call this the default mode network of the brain, that constant hum of self-referential thought that is active when we are not focused on a specific task. Manas is this network, a processing unit that is always on, always scanning, always feeling, and always doubting. It is the engine of our emotional and mental turbulence, but it is not the enemy. It is simply a tool, a messenger, bringing news from the outside world into the inner kingdom. The problem only begins when we mistake the messenger for the king. If Manas is the restless messenger presenting 100 conflicting reports, then there must be a higher authority to make sense of it all. This authority is Buddhi. Buddhi is the discriminating intellect, the higher mind, the seat of wisdom. While Manas asks, "Do I want this?" Buddhi asks, "Is this wise? Is this aligned with my long-term well-being?" It is the calm, clear intelligence that can analyze, judge, and make decisive choices. Going back to our inner marketplace, while Manas is flustered by all the incoming goods, Buddhi is the quiet accountant in the back office, looking at the ledgers, assessing the value, and making a strategic decision. It is Buddhi that says, "Yes, the cake looks tempting, but my health is more important," or "A small piece is a reasonable indulgence that will not derail my goals." Buddhi is the charioteer. The senses are the wild horses, and Manas represents the reins that communicate the pull of the horses to the driver. A weak, sleepy, or intoxicated charioteer, a weak Buddhi, is helplessly dragged along by the reins wherever the horses want to go, leading to a life of impulsive action and regret. A strong, awake, and skillful charioteer, a powerful Buddhi, uses the same reins not to kill the horses, but to guide them with firm, intelligent control toward a chosen destination. The ancient seers said that the essence of wisdom is the ability to discern the real from the unreal, the truth from the hearsay, no matter who says it or how appealing it sounds. This is the very function of Buddhi. In modern terms, this capacity for planning, impulse control, and ethical judgment is largely seated in our brain's prefrontal cortex. Every time you consciously pause before reacting, every time you choose a difficult but rewarding path over an easy but detrimental one, you are exercising and strengthening your buddhi. It is your inner guru, your own innate capacity to see clearly and choose wisely. Now we must ask, where do all these likes, dislikes, and deep-seated tendencies of manas come from? Why does one person's manas desire solitude while another's craves company? Why do certain situations trigger an irrational fear in you? The answer lies in the third, and perhaps most mysterious, layer of the mind, chitta. If manas is the surface waves of the ocean, turbulent and ever-changing, chitta is the vast, silent, and fathomless depth beneath. Chitta is the great storehouse of memory, the hard drive of your consciousness. Every single experience you have ever had, every thought, every emotion, every action, from this life and, as the yogis say, from countless lives before, is recorded in the chitta. These impressions are not static files, they are living seeds called samskaras. These samskaras are the blueprints of your personality. They are the roots of your habits, the source of your innate talents, your inexplicable phobias, and your karmic patterns. When a situation arises in the present, it is not just manas reacting to new data. Manas is reacting through the filter of all the samskaras stored in your chitta. A past trauma creates a samskara of fear, which then colors all future, similar experiences. A repeated action creates a samskara of habit, making that action feel automatic and natural. The entire science of yoga is summarized in one famous sutra, Yogas Chitta, Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind stuff. The vrittis or fluctuations are the waves of thought and emotion that arise on the surface. The chitta is the deep reservoir from which they arise. The goal of yoga, meditation, and self-inquiry is not just to manage the surface waves, but to dive deep, to understand and ultimately purify the chitta itself. This concept has profound parallels with modern psychology. Sigmund Freud's unconscious, a repository of repressed memories and desires, is a perfect description of one layer of chitta. Modern therapies that work to heal deep trauma are, in essence, methods for accessing and neutralizing these potent samskaras stored in the depths of our being. Your past is not gone. It is alive within you, in the silent archive of your chitta, shaping your present moment. We have manas, the sensory processor. We have buddhi, the decision-making intellect. And we have chitta, the deep memory store. But there is one final, crucial function that binds them all together and creates the very person you think you are. This function is ahankara. Ahankara is the I-maker. It is the powerful, subtle, and pervasive sense of self, the ego. Ahankara is the function that looks at all the activities of the mind and body, and claims ownership. When manas thinks, ahankara says, I am thinking. When buddhi makes a decision, ahankara proudly declares, I decided. When the body feels pain, ahankara cries out, I am in pain. It appropriates everything. This is my body, these are my thoughts, this is my memory, this is my success, this is my failure. Ahankara is the glue that binds pure formless consciousness to the physical and mental machinery, creating the illusion of a separate, individual self. The Yoga Sutras describe this as the fundamental error of human suffering, the false identification of the seer, pure consciousness, with the instrument of seeing, the mind. It is like an actor who forgets he is an actor and begins to believe he truly is the king he is playing on stage. He feels the king's pride, the king's fears, and the king's sorrows as his own. This is our predicament. The ahankara makes us believe we are our jobs, our relationships, our bodies, our opinions. Consequently, any perceived threat to these external, temporary things becomes a devastating threat to our very sense of self. This is why a simple criticism can feel so deeply wounding, and why loss can be so shattering. It's not just an event happening to us. The ahankara convinces us it is happening to the very core of who we are. To truly grasp how these four functions work together, let us revisit the profound analogy of the chariot. Imagine your existence as a magnificent chariot. The chariot itself is your physical body, the vehicle for this journey through life. Pulling this chariot are 5 powerful, wild horses, representing your 5 senses. They are constantly tempted by the world around them, wanting to bolt towards every pleasant sight, sound, and smell. The reins, which connect the driver to the horses, are the manas, chakoplephak. The reins feel every pull and tug of the horses. They convey the conflict and desire. They waver and tremble. They have no will of their own. They are simply the interface. The charioteer, holding the reins, is the buddhi. This is the intelligence, the one whose job it is to make wise decisions. A skilled charioteer uses the information from the reins, manas, to firmly guide the powerful horses, senses, towards the chosen destination. And sitting silently, majestically, in the back of the chariot, is the true owner, the passenger. This passenger is the Atman, the self, the pure consciousness, that is the silent witness of the entire journey, unaffected by the bumps in the road, or the wildness of the horses. So where is Ahankara in this picture? Ahankara is the master illusion. It is that moment when the charioteer, the buddhi, forgets he is merely the driver employed by the passenger. He looks at the beautiful chariot and thinks, "This is me." He feels the pull of the horses and thinks, "These are my desires." He looks at the destination and thinks, "This is my goal." He completely identifies with his role, and forgets the silent master in the back. He begins to believe, "I am the chariot, I am the journey, I am the owner." This single, fundamental error of identification is the source of all his anxiety. An injury to a horse becomes a personal wound. Another chariot overtaking him becomes a personal insult. The entire spiritual journey is the process of the charioteer, buddhi, turning around even for a moment, and recognizing the true passenger. In that recognition, the crippling illusion of Ahankara dissolves, not into nothingness, but into its right and proper function. A simple, humble tool in service to the true self. This inner map is not just a tool for personal liberation. It is a profound lens for understanding our world and cultivating compassion. When we look at society, we see these 4 functions playing out on a massive scale. Much of our public discourse, especially on social media, operates at the level of a collective manas. It's all about instant emotional reaction, tribal likes and dislikes, outrage, and confirmation bias. It is society acting like a single, giant, restless mind, chasing every fleeting sensation. A society that consciously chooses to be guided by buddhi would look very different. It would be a society that prioritizes critical thinking, nuanced debate, scientific evidence, and long-term consequences over short-term gratification and sensationalism. It would use its collective intellect to address complex issues like climate change and inequality, instead of being perpetually distracted by the horses of greed and fear. Furthermore, understanding Ahankara gives us the key to dismantling the very root of social division. All forms of prejudice, racism, casteism, nationalism, religious intolerance, are expressions of a collective Ahankara. The personal I expands to a tribal we. The thought "I am right" becomes "my group is right." "I am superior" becomes "my nation is superior." By understanding that this sense of a separate superior self is a mental construct, a functional illusion, the entire foundation of prejudice crumbles. We begin to see every other, not as a threat, but as another chariot, with a different design and on a different road, but carrying a passenger whose essential nature is identical to the one within us. Finally, the concept of a collective chitta invites us into a radical form of empathy. Societies, just like individuals, have a memory store. Historical injustices, wars, famines, and systemic oppression leave deep samskaras in the shared consciousness of a people. This helps explain intergenerational trauma, cycles of violence, and deeply ingrained social anxieties. It moves us beyond blame. We stop asking, "Why can't they just get over it?" and start to see that present-day reactions are often the painful sprouting of seeds planted generations ago. Compassion ceases to be a sentimental feeling and becomes a historical and psychological necessity. Healing a society requires acknowledging and cleansing its collective chitta. just as healing an individual requires addressing their personal past. The path inward is the path outward. A society of individuals who understand their own inner machinery is a society that can begin to heal its collective wounds and build a wiser, more compassionate future. The goal is not to annihilate these functions, it is to create harmony. A healthy, enlightened life is one where Manas serves as a brilliant and quick messenger, Buddhi leads with clarity and wisdom, Chitta is a clean and clear reservoir of memory, not a swamp of trauma, and Ahankara is purified into a simple, unattached sense of I am, the humble servant of the silent self that witnesses it all. This journey into the mind is a lifelong exploration. It's about moving from being a passenger tossed about by the waves, to becoming the calm navigator of your own inner ocean. If these ideas resonate with you, if you feel the call to explore your own inner world more deeply, I invite you to subscribe to I Have a Cause. Join us as we continue to build this bridge between ancient wisdom and modern life. And for our Tamil-speaking audience, a complete version of this episode is also available in Tamil on the channel. Thank you for sharing your time and your attention.